Well, hello and welcome back to Jones Financial Talk. This is Nick Jones from Jones and Associates Premier Financial Solutions. Listeners, if you'd like more information about what you hear on this fine radio show that Mr. Tony Shore and I produce weekly, you can get that information by just going to our website at jonesfinancialtalk.com. You can click on the radio page and listen to all of our past shows. You can thumb through those, and you can also download lots of this content on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and even Amazon Music. And if you have specific questions after the show and want to hear from us, you can request that online, or you can just give us a call at 541-500-4321. That's our local number here in the Rogue Valley. And give us some information about what you'd like to hear on the show, or ask us any questions that you might have. Talking to some clients this afternoon about some specific topics we covered last week, actually. And before I bring Tony in, I just can't believe that we're already to this time of the year. Fall is upon us again here in the beautiful Rogue Valley. The temperatures are cooling down a little bit. The smoke is gone. And there's lots of things that I want to discuss today. Maybe a little fall financial tune-up for those of you that are listening, topics that we should be discussing together during this time of the year. So, Mr. Tony Shore, I hope you're doing well. Hope you had a great Labor Day, and I'm looking forward to getting into the show with you today.
Oh, for sure. I really appreciate it, Nick. Yeah, and I've been doing great. Yeah, I can't believe time flies. I mean, maybe I'm just getting older, but it just seems like it goes by so quick. And I do love this time of year, so that's always good. But yeah, I've been doing great. I've spent a lot of time with family lately, which is always good. I've been able to do that. I'm fortunate. And I've been busy. I know you've been busy. It gets crazy busy. And you're right. I mean, preparing your finances for fall is huge. And it is my favorite season, even though it means summer's over, which is, I can't believe it's already over. But the weather, like you said, cooler air, clearer skies. I love the weather this time of year. I really do.
Easier to breathe. I love it.
Yeah, much easier to breathe. So that's a good thing. So there's always good and bad. But, over the summer, we kind of push our spending plans, our budgeting. We don't think about it. We take our vacations. People spend a lot of money traveling, boating, golfing. Whatever you do during the summer, you get busy, right? And sometimes you forget about your finances or put it off. But this is a good time before the holiday season starts to really check where you're at. And there are things we need to be aware of. And I'm glad you're doing a show about this today, Nick.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about this morning, thinking about my boys. I mean, my oldest, Davis, is 17. He's a senior in high school. He's going to be gone at the end of this year, and
Crazy.
Part of my youngest is starting to drive now. So it's like, yeah, where do the years go? I have no idea, Tony. And we were talking a lot, actually, because the boys just went back to school. And it clearly changes things drastically in your life when they've been home for a month or two during the summer, and then all of a sudden, and doing fun things and spending too much money on vacations like you talked about. And then boom, they're right back at it like they have a full-time job going back to work, And so they asked me, well, how is this different for you? What are the types of things that you talk to clients about this time of year? And clearly it's learn about all the fun things that they got to do during the summer. But a big part of that is helping them understand and talk through, the patterns of their recent spending, right? Because when you're retired, you should have a pretty solid income plan that's established with your advisor, and you should have, the ability to be able to do the things that you want, but you got to constantly review that and make sure that you're not going overboard, right?
Right. Yeah, you do have to constantly review it. And I think, especially after the summer where you probably haven't gone over in detail your spending plan or your retirement plan, but you've got to have a financial plan in place and work with a financial professional like yourself. That's a huge help. And this is a good time of year to get that review in. And for those out there, I urge them listening to get a second opinion from you and your team there at Jones Financial Talk.
There's so many things that you should be looking at and can do. For instance, and everything changes in the markets, both with spending habits as well as everything else. But this is the time of the year when you've just come off of summer to think through what those spending habits have been, and did you put extra money on a credit card, for instance, for some trips, and what does that mean, for you for the next steps of your retirement for the rest of the year? Well, Tony, today we know that interest rates are going to start going down, but we know that credit card interest rates are almost at an all-time high. I was talking to some clients, actually 3 clients last week, that are looking at the difference between auto loans and credit cards, and gosh, we're close to 30% on some of our credit card balances.
Yep.
I mean, that's crazy. So clearly you don't want to overspend. It's really easy to do that with credit cards nowadays. So that's something that you just need to kind of think through and make sure that you're always on top of. The other thing is, because interest rates are going down, or so we think they are, what is that going to open up for lots of people in the fall and going forward? All kinds of other loan products may become more attractive again that you should be talking to your advisor about.
Yeah, you're right. And you make some great points there. I think a lot of people don't stop to smell the roses when it comes to their finances. And we've been going. So you make a great point. I mean, obviously, you want to look at debt like credit card debt, other types of debt that you might have, and get that paid down and get a plan in place to make sure you're not carrying a balance on a credit card. And if for some reason you went on vacation this summer and put it on a credit card and just said, I'll deal with it later, hey, get a financial plan in place to get that paid off, because credit card balances, even if the Fed lowers interest rates, those credit card interest rates, it's not like they're going to drop them way down. No. They're going to stay high. I mean, from 30%, hopefully they can't go any higher, but even 20% is way too much to be paying.
Totally. And, the thing I like is all the clients of mine that reach out to me when they have specific purchases that they want to make. And for some reason right now, there's a lot going on. I've had 4 or 5 clients in the last week or two talking to me about auto purchases, and it's been fun. I love talking about cars and financing, honestly. And so, being able to help them understand what rates are available at what banks and why, and how that whole process works. There's still a shortage of cars out there as a result of COVID, just even though it's been a couple of years. And so there's lots of different ways that you can upgrade things for these unexpected expenses. Like, my car just broke and it's probably the final time. What do I do? If you don't know and you haven't spent a lot of time dealing with that on a regular basis, you should be talking to your financial advisor, right? I mean, I talk to clients about this specific topic and funding for different things like real estate and autos and all kinds of things all throughout the year. And so I'm constantly looking at the best rates for banks. I do not sell any of these products, but I really want to understand them. And I love explaining to my clients how to put themselves in a better situation. And so I guess the point here, Tony, is we're always going to have unexpected pop-up expenses, right? And you need to understand how you're going to include that in your budget, and you need to be able to have that conversation openly with your advisor.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that's the new terminology, pop-up expenses. You don't call it like emergency expenses. The kids today, it's a pop-up expense, right?
That's right. I mean, tires for the car, the hot water. Oh, okay. Here's a terrible one. My air conditioner has had some serious issues this year. And so,
no.
I mean, it's not replacing. It's not replacement time yet, but it's just okay. Every time I call the air conditioning company to come out, which has done a phenomenal job getting here, by the way, it's expensive, and that's something that pops up that can really change people's budgets, and so you've got to factor in not only just your monthly bills, but those one-off or pop-up expenses that do occur.
Yeah, true. That's a great point. That's another good point. Pop-up expenses. So, and I know, we've already covered debt a little bit, but there are methods to pay down debt. And like you said, find the lowest interest rate, maybe consolidate some of that debt, get a lower rate, right?
Yep. And have that conversation with your advisor. Last week, I was talking to a client who's in a small tax bracket, and they've got some money in a retirement account, and Do we want them to keep $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on a credit card when they're paying 20 to 30%? Or should they take some extra money out of a retirement account if they can afford it, because this has been a good year, and still have to pay taxes on that, but put themselves in a better situation? So there's lots of different ways to look at things. And even though you're retired and you feel like you're on a fixed budget and a fixed income, when markets help us like they have this year, it's an opportunity for you to consolidate and do the things that you need to do to keep your finances, in a good spot, for sure.
Right. Yeah, that's smart. And again, it comes back to having a plan, working with a professional like yourself. Don't go it alone. There's no reason to, and you're going to make costly mistakes. That's why you need a financial advisor who is a fiduciary, who's going to look at your personal situation and look out for your best interests. So before we move on, I want to take this opportunity to let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you, right? Let's give away a few more copies of your book. We've been doing that on the past few shows. I'm going to keep giving away copies of your book. I hope you don't mind, Nick. You're just going to have
you
to
go right ahead,
more.
Tony.
You're going to have to order more. But for our listeners out there, I want them to know all they have to do is call, and you'll send them out a copy of your book. I would encourage them to set up a no charge, no obligation consultation, and then they can come in, get a review of where they're at, sit down and talk to you and your staff there at Jones and Associates, and get a copy of your book. That number is 541-500-4321. Again, that's 541-500-4321. Easy to remember, 500-4321 or 541-500-4321. Easy number to remember. I'm glad you've got an easy number. Makes it easier for me to read it off on the show. And
Definitely.
they can also go to jonesfinancialtalk.com. They can listen to this show, past shows, subscribe to the show as a podcast there. And there's a contact form they can fill out. And if they fill that out, someone from your office will get back to them, and then they can tell them, hey, I want a copy of that book, or hey, I want a no charge, no obligation consultation. All they have to do to get that is mention that they heard about it on the radio show or the video or podcast, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Awesome.
And there's other topics that obviously are going to be probably top of their mind, or should be,
Sure.
or maybe not. So this time of year, Tony, we're talking about the fall, right? Here's what I tend to find. People come out of summer, they're so busy, they had such a great time with their family. They're getting back into the grind of what's going to happen between now and the end of the year. Lots of things are happening this year. We've got an election upon us. We're coming up on the holidays. We've got property taxes that are going to be due. Lots of things happen. But for those of you that are continuing to work, there's tons of other things that you should be doing this time of year. You should be looking at all of the employee benefit plans that you have and making sure that you're maxing all those out, those health savings accounts and flexible savings accounts, for instance, in your 401ks. A lot of people this time of the year get to the point where maybe they've reached the Social Security max income wise. And so now they've got extra money coming in monthly because they've paid enough into taxes. What do they do with the extra money? Do you just put it in your bank account and spend it? Or do you save it? Do you put it in different areas? And so the fall season just brings a lot of things to the forefront from a financial standpoint. For those of you who are retired, you know that this time of year is when you need to prepare yourself for health insurance open enrollment. And many times that is very, very important. In Oregon, we're lucky that you don't have to necessarily do all of that right in the fall. You can do that during your birthday month, but you do have to make sure that you have adequate coverage for all of your prescription drug plans this time of year. And so that's another thing that you should just be getting ready for and making sure that you're talking to your advisors about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. And you can make really costly mistakes with those retirement accounts like 401ks and your employer sponsored accounts and IRAs. So, and don't just do what your neighbor did or, what your best buddy recommends. Go to a financial advisor and get that. They're non-emotional. They'll tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, right?
It is difficult sometimes, I mean,
Yeah.
in down markets, or if people are spending too much or whatever, that is definitely something you have to talk about. But you're right. You need to have a sounding board, somebody to be able to ask those questions to and make sure that they're on your side and asking you the right questions. And, here's an interesting one, Tony. I find lots of times that people forget to update their beneficiaries as needed. Maybe they're
Mm.
recently married, or maybe they've moved to a different job. And I'm going to be honest and tell you this. I've been a financial advisor for many years, been doing this my entire career. My wife and I were sitting down last week and we were looking at our 401k plans, and she was giving me a hard time about what to invest in, as you would think she would.
Uh-huh.
And we noticed that our custodian that we were using at the time had not updated our beneficiaries. We thought that they were on there, but they weren't. And
Oh.
so right away we went in and put our beneficiaries in, obviously, as we need to. But if we wouldn't have just caught that, we could have been in a situation where we had some difficult turmoil, in the future. And so it's always good to do those secondary reviews and cursory reviews of all of these different accounts. That's a huge thing that you can do this time of year for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Beneficiary designations. You've talked about that on past shows a lot, Nick. And because it's so important, you have to have those in place and review them at least once a year. Sit down and review your beneficiary designations on all those life insurance policies, your financial documents, all of your accounts, because you don't want it going to an ex-spouse or somebody that's no longer in your life, and they do take precedent over a will or anything else, right? Those beneficiary designations,
That's right.
that is what is going to happen. If you were only married a year, and then when you were young, and then you got remarried, had a family for the last 20 years, but you forgot to change that beneficiary designation, no matter what you say in the will, it'll go to your ex-spouse if that's who you have listed. And that's gone all the way to the Supreme Court, right? I mean, that's
It's an unfortunate
huge.
thing that does happen.
Yeah.
Yep. The
Yeah.
other thing, Tony, too, is even though we're not there, people are maybe going to freak out when I mention this next topic, but you need to get ready for tax season. I know we're 6 months to 9 months away, but here's the plan. If you don't, adequately plan with your advisor right now during this tax year, things that you can or can't do, like Roth conversions,
Yep.
or property taxes that are coming up and where you're going to get the money to pay for that, or your required minimum distributions that are required by the end of the year. All of these things are hot topics that you should be talking about in the fourth quarter with your advisor, getting ready for tax season. Even though we're at the end of this year and we're not doing our taxes till next year, having those conversations. If you don't plan, accordingly, you're going to miss opportunities. I've seen it many, many times when people say, "Oh, I wish I would have converted some money, but now it's March." Well, why did that happen? Did the advisor not ask you about that?
Yeah.
If your tax person is doing your preparation, a lot of times they send out those tax organizers right in the fall, because that's when they have more time to help you do that tax planning. So all of those things are topics, again, during the fall season here, that you should be thinking through.
Well, yeah, and getting ready for tax season, that's huge. And taxes always play a part in every topic we discuss on the show. You've made me well aware of that, to keep an eye on that. And I know that's something that you and your team help people with. You work alongside tax preparers and make sure that somebody isn't just looking at the past year like a typical tax preparer will, but you're looking at the big picture, what their future tax situation might be, so they don't get themselves into a situation later on down the line when they retire and they've got this ticking tax time bomb because all of their retirement income is in an account where you have to pay taxes on all the money you take out, right?
That's right. And Tony, we know that the current tax laws are going to expire at the end of 2025.
Yeah.
So what that really means, like right now, today, for people is, if you want to utilize some tax strategy that's currently written into the code, you do have a couple of years left to do that if you count 24 and 25. So um, properly preparing, talking about that with your advisor, making sure that they're asking you the right questions about how to target things that are important to you. right? Including tax rates that may be going up and capital gains rates that may be going up. All of
Oh,
those
yeah.
things are super important this time of year to talk about.
Yeah, and a lot of people might be impacted if the current tax law that is allowed to expire, right?
That's
I
right.
mean, and it expires the end of next year, and that's coming up faster than you think. I mean, this year's winding down, so you really want to look at that. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, if that is allowed to expire, a lot can happen. So work now and get a plan in place for the future, and our listeners can do that by getting a hold of you. So before we go on, we're going to take a moment here to just let our listeners know, Nick, how they can do that. And I will give the phone number, which is 541 500 4321. That's 541 500 4321. And listeners, you'll get a copy of the book, set up a complimentary, no charge, no obligation consultation. And Nick, I think everybody's situation is different, so you need an individualized plan, but get a fall checkup, right?
Definitely. And you can also just go to our website at jonesfinancialtalk.com to request that. There's lots of great resources on there, like asking about Social Security maximization if you're not quite at that age yet, or
Sure.
Medicare planning, or investment planning, clearly, estate planning, wills, trusts, those types of things. Lots of great topics. And you don't have to tackle them all at once, but these are things that you should be constantly, thinking about and discussing with somebody that you're sitting down with, hopefully.
Yeah.
um
Yep. And I
so
know
another
healthcare is obviously, I just wanted to make one more mention about healthcare as far as in the fall, we're coming up on open enrollment for
That's
Medicare.
right.
And I just wanted to bring that back up so our listeners were aware of that. And your office, you have a Medicare specialist there that can help people, right?
We do, yes, we do. And that's a huge topic for this time of the year, for sure. The point is, if you're just thinking that what you have today in anything from an investment to a savings account to CD to a health insurance plan is adequate, um, you should be shopping, because
Yeah.
things change drastically, and the healthcare system is changing at an incredibly fast rate today.
Hmm.
Doctors in our area are getting, incented to go to different carriers and things of that nature, and so you got to be on top of it. It's so important, and so all of these things are really what are preparing you throughout the year in this fall kind of planning season, right? To prepare yourself for 2025. And you should be doing this at least annually, talking about these specific topics with your advisors.
Yeah, and it's getting more competitive. So you want to see what new things are being offered to lure clients over. And it's kind of like, the cell phone companies or other companies. There's a special plan, and to get you to move from one Medicare Advantage plan into another, they're really offering some pretty good policies and coverage, and low premiums to no premiums. That's really a good thing. But everybody's situation is different once again. And we'll do a whole show on healthcare and retirement and open enrollment. Maybe we can have your specialist on. But I thought I'd bring that up. I know that's a big part of what you're talking about here.
Definitely. Definitely. And then, also, you got to think about what is specific to the markets today that you should be discussing and thinking through. And we mentioned it at the beginning of the show, but if the Federal Reserve actually starts cutting rates here this month, lots of things are going to happen. That might mean a great thing from a borrowing standpoint, but from an investing standpoint, that could change things drastically.
Yeah.
So don't just leave your money sitting in your bank account and think that the bank's going to continue to take care of you.
Right.
You got to be
Yeah.
proactive.
You
And
do.
today, we're at the top of the rate cycle. We're at the top of the rate curve. And as a result of that, there's tons of different things that are available, product wise and solutions wise, that you could be capitalizing on, you should be capitalizing on before rates change. Because when rates go down, typically those very conservative fixed investments go down very, very quickly. And
Sure.
so, I think that's yet another thing. Like when I sit down with clients and I talk to them and I've got a big agenda about what I want to discuss and I answer their questions and they do too, there should always be ideas that your advisor is sharing with you to put you in a better situation. That's what you're
Yeah.
paying them to do, right? Find those opportunities that they can't find, that you can't find on your own, or that you don't see every day, or that you don't fully understand. And that's why you should be meeting on a regular basis with your advisor.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Number one, be working with an advisor. Number two, meet at least once a year. And especially during this time of year, it's a good time to review things like healthcare options. You mentioned Social Security. There are so many things out there that are a part of this. What's something else for the fall financial checkup that you would recommend for our listeners out there?
One thing I actually thought about, and part of the reason for this is a lot of banking apps now offer it, but credit reports.
Oh,
The reason why I thought about it was because we're going into a situation here coming up where I believe interest rates are going to go down. And what that means is you as a consumer might have better opportunities to get financing rates that are very low,
sure.
but you're only going to get them if you have a good credit report. And
Right.
so, when's the last time you checked? Has anybody been messing around with any of your bank accounts or the credit reports that are so important when you're looking for those things? So, lots of banking apps have the ability to just quickly look at what your credit score is, which is important. But you actually have the ability to just go directly to some of those credit companies and get updated reports to make sure that there's no errors or that nobody else is utilizing any of your credit, or that something funky isn't going on. I have kind of a funny story, Tony. When I was in high school, when I got my first car, my parents gave me a gas card, a Chevron gas card, and said, on it, in emergencies, you can use this. Okay. And the funniest thing about it was they had been a member of Chevron and had their gas card since about 8 years before I was born. So
Wow.
on my card, it said Nicholas Jones with a member since 1970. And I'm like, well, I was born in 78. So I don't know how I can be a member since 1970. It was hilarious. Right. So anyways, I rarely use the card. I went to college. I think I
See, you're a
chopped
better
the card
son
up.
than I am.
Yeah.
If my parents gave me a gas card and said only use this in emergencies, you know what I constitute as an emergency? Needing to fill up
Pizza.
my gas tank, filling up my gas tank. Yeah, running out of gas is an emergency. I don't want to
Totally.
do that, so I've got to use the card.
My dad, he was a financial advisor, so he had all three of his
I
sons
know.
working at a very, very young age and understanding how this was going to go. But
Sure.
the
Yeah.
funniest thing was, so I chopped up the credit card. I don't know, when I was in my 20s in college, and my wife and I, bought a house when we moved up to Oregon. And guess what was on my credit report? That open Chevron credit card still. And so I call the credit agency and I go, I haven't used this in like 20 years. Like, what's going on? Like, yep, but it's still an open line of credit. You need to shut that thing down. And I'm going, what? I literally had to call my parents and get on the phone with them to Chevron to shut this account down that I hadn't used in 20 years, because it was not negatively affecting my credit score, but it was totally on there and showing up still. It was so
Yeah.
funny. I'm like, I don't even remember ever using it.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's why you need to check your credit score.
Yes.
There are so many things that could be on there that you thought, "Oh, I haven't had that credit card in years," but it's still on there because it's hard to action. Just because you pay it off doesn't mean it's closed. That's the
That's
problem.
another trick. That's right.
Yeah,
They're gonna keep the
that's a
revolving credit
problem.
open.
Oh, those companies are tricky. But hey, we're out of time for today's show. It flew by, Nick. Let our listeners out there know one more time how they can get a hold of you, get a copy of the book, and set up that consultation.
Sure thing. Two quick ways. If you just go to jonesfinancialtalk.com, you'll get all the information you want, I hope, right there on the website, or just give us a call here in the Rogue Valley at 541-500-4321.
All right, and that does it for today's episode of Jones Financial Talk with our host, Nick Jones.